Well, it is the end of January officially, and I have no bookshelves behind me anymore because all of my books are in boxes. Almost all of them. Some of them. Most of them. A non insignificant amount of them are in boxes because I'm moving soon. So, I don't actually have. I have one of them. I have one book out physically that I read in January. But January was an excellent reading month. I did jump into Malazan. Book of the Fallen was up first with Gardens of the Moon. And this surprisingly didn't take me as long as I thought it would to read. I bounced a little bit between the audiobook and the physical, which I typically do for large epic fantasies, just because I like to get a mix of both and sometimes do them simultaneously. Um, what Steven Erikson is doing here is obviously ambitious, and I'm saying that mostly based on what everybody else tells me. Obviously, as I said in my full review that I do have up on the channel, it's definitely a confusing thing to jump into because your hand is not being held. And honestly, it's not set up in such a simple way that a lot of fantasy is, where you're introduced with some kind of like overall big epic prologue that doesn't necessarily directly impact the story, and then you start off, small town village, here's your main character, here's, the crew that we're going to be following, and then off you go. This is very much, you're in the middle of a war that's already happening, you're pretty far into it, this world has just already been living and you've just been dropped into it, and you have to kind of figure out a lot of things for yourself. So it's definitely different than what I'm used to reading, and as far as epic fantasy is concerned, especially just because it's so against the traditional tropey beginning of a lot of stories, whether it be sci-fi fantasy or just epic fantasy. I mean, something like the Wheel of Time, you're introduced to your small town village and your characters, and they go off on a quest. Or, Red Rising, you're introduced to your main character. He kind of collects friends along the way, and you go off on your, your quest. That's obviously like super trimmed down of what a lot of these stories are, but in their essence, Malazan's just very different, and you're just kind of thrown into it and expected to follow along and pay attention, and that's definitely intriguing, and I am going to continue the series because it is so unlike anything that I've read, and honestly, just because of how much people talk about it and love it, that's the main reason I want to get into it, just because it seems like it's going to be such a grand scale of a story that I've never personally experienced, so I'm definitely looking forward to getting more Malazan. The second book that I read in January was the finale of the Poppy War series, which was The Burning God. I have a full review of that as well on the channel, and this knocked it out of the park for me overall as a story. There were a couple of hiccups and minor critiques, things that I would have liked to be a little bit different with The Burning God. I still think far and away Dragon Republic Book 2 was just hands down the best of the series, but The Burning God definitely did not disappoint. I did have a couple of gripes, as I mentioned, so I thought the part 2 was a little bit too long and sort of inconsequential. I feel like it could have been structured differently. There could have been, an additional POV aside from Rin, because I feel like you really needed that to get the full grasp of the war and the story. And I think that part 3 went a little bit too quick for the finale. As good as it was, and it is kind of what I expected to happen, it was still very much enjoyable. But as I mentioned in the spoiler part of my review, if you have read it, go watch that part of kind of where I had wished the story went. Just a little bit of a grim, dark end to it. But overall, I mean, R.F. Kuang really impressed me with this story. As young as she was when she started it, how much she pulls from actual history in China, and just the horrible, horrible shit that the people went through back in the Opium Wars, and just the rape of Nanking, and just all these things that she pulls from real life. Modeling Rin after Mao, and what if Mao was a woman. All the stuff that she pulled from was fantastic, and it makes me more interested to learn about China in that time period, because it's so engaging and messed up, to be honest. And there's a lot of things in this story that can make you cringe or kind of at times, and it was great. The action was fantastic throughout the series. I think that ramped up and was well done throughout. The magic system was incredibly interesting with the shamans, and how they pull their power from various gods is incredibly cool. The dialogue, I love how adult it was, and just to the point, kind of just raw language. There are fantasy swears, and people say tiger's tits and things like that. But it's not like there's a lack of swearing, because the F word is thrown about all the time. They very much talk like adults and don't hesitate to swear or get violent or anything like that. So I absolutely love the series, and I'm looking forward to more from R.F. Kuang. Next up, I finally stepped back into the Banished Lands with Ruin, which is book 3 of the Faithful and the Fallen series. Again, I don't have it on me because it's in a box. Actually, I think it's sitting right back here. Do I have it? Dog bed out of the way. John Gwynn, we meet again. Stay. So, Ruin by John Gwynn, book 3 of the Banished Lands, Faithful and the Fallen series. This was excellent. 5 out of 5 for me. This was a fantastic continuation of the story. And what I really love about this series, as I talk about in my review that is also on the channel, John Gwynn is fantastic with dialogue and action. He's created a massive cast of truly interesting characters. There is really not a single POV that I'm... Stay. Books. There's not a single POV that I am bored by. Even the, anti-hero / villain characters are incredibly engaging and interesting to read about. And that's a credit to John Gwynn himself, because oftentimes when you have this many characters, some of the chapters, some of the POVs, they're just going to be boring. And I never felt that in any of these chapters, whether it be Rafe or Lycos or Corbin, Kywin, Makeen, any of these characters. They're all incredibly interesting, and all their storylines are excellent. And I really loved his spin on the good versus evil and sort of chosen one trope that you see starting in Malice, because it really took some turns that I was not expecting, and that kept this incredibly fresh. And Ruin really stepped up the game on killing characters. This book, there's a lot of death, and some of them are important characters to me anyway. And it's just, you never know who's going to make it and who's not. This is truly, there's not a ton of plot armor. People will, at the very least, get hurt or maimed, if not downright killed. And you see it through a lot of different characters' eyes. That's another thing that he does so well, is the POVs in this. You constantly get various POVs within a same battle, which I really love, because you get the battle from multiple POVs of opposing sides, and you actually are in the shoes of people when they perish, and that's always really interesting and well done. And I'm really looking forward to the conclusion. I hear Wrath is fantastic. I don't doubt it. I have loved each book more than the last, so I am fully anticipating Wrath to knock me on my ass, and then I'm probably immediately going to have to start the sequel trilogy of Blood and Bone, because everybody says that it's just as good, if not better, and the characters are just as engaging. So, I trust this guy. I want to read Shadow of the Gods when that comes out later this year as well. So I'm looking forward to finishing the Banished Lands next month with Wrath, and then continuing on to the rest of whatever he writes, because the guy is awesome. Now you're going to be a book stand. And then I finally got back to the Dresden Files, book 5, which is Death Masks. And again, like I said, when I started the series, everybody said, the first 3 books, you kind of got to give it some time. They're the worst of the Dresden books. Guys, the worst Dresden book is fucking awesome, and a very good time. And I really loved Stormfront, genuinely. Full Moon was kind of a step down, but then the Grave Peril, Summer Night, both fantastic books. This takes over as my number 1 Dresden book right now, and I'm really looking forward to continuing this. So I'm probably going to figure out a way to at least read 1 a month, if not more, because these are just simply amazing urban fantasy stories. I love Harry Dresden, the character. I love everything about this world that Jim Butcher has built with this story. I love the aspects of the Never Never, and how each of these books expands just the scope of what is possible in this world, because you start out, you have vampires, you have a couple of warlocks, you've got fairies, and then ghosts, and more vampires and werewolves, and then you really have, a lot of vampires in this one, and you've got all kinds of demons and angels, and just everything is in these books one way or another. It's awesome. The side characters are fantastic. Murphy's great. I really love Susan. Michael is fantastic. You meet some other characters in this book specifically, I don't want to name names, that are really interesting as well. One of the best villains that I've seen in the series to this point. These books are witty. They're quick to read, perfect palate cleansers, while also just being awesome. Everything that this man writes to a page is fantastic. I'm constantly laughing out loud. I'm highlighting sections of the book, at least taking notes. I don't touch the physical books. Only monsters write in their books. Just, I don't know. These books are just perfect. And I mean, people are not joking when they say like how bingeable these books are and how people are willing to wreck their entire TBRs for these books. I mean, a buddy of mine, Nick, in Discord, has read 8 Dresden books this month, which is crazy. But I mean, if that's all you're going to read, you can fly through these books. I mean, 3 to 4 days max for a lot of these. They're so readable, so digestible, and they're entertaining throughout. So I've never picked up a Dresden book and been bored. I've never had really any downtime, and even Full Moon, which is like my worst so far, was still really, really fun. It just got a little silly at times, but this series is fantastic. If you're not reading the Dresden Files, I don't really know what you're doing with your life, but I would suggest adding Harry Dresden into it immediately. And last up, but certainly not least, because I am becoming a very, very quick mega fan of this series. I'm not done with this yet, but I'll finish it tonight after I film this, actually. Guards by Terry Pratchett. So I stepped into Discworld last month with Mort, and it was incredible. I had a vague understanding of what Discworld was. It's always sold as absurdism, which it's really not. It's just kind of ridiculous fantasy at times. There are some things that are kind of wacky in it, but it's not, I don't know, it's not as abstract or absurd as some people say, I guess. I mean, the premises of these books are hilarious, obviously. But I started with Mort. I love the character Death. Mort was fun as well, but Death really carries that book because he's just such a great character. And then rather than just continue on with the Death series, which I probably will do at this point, as well as the other Watch books, is I stepped into Guards because these are sort of the main two that I heard constantly of like where to jump into Discworld, unless you want to go Colors of Magic and start, in release order. But I've also heard like don't do that because they're not really indicative of the series overall. So I will get to those ones eventually. But Guards, I mean, once again, hilarious setup and story. The characters are engaging. Captain Vimes is hilarious. He's always drunk and he's like taking notes and writing letters, but he's drunk while he's doing it. So like the words are nonsense sometimes. You meet Carrot, who all I could think of was Elf when I was reading his parts of the story, because he is supposed to be a dwarf. He's raised by dwarves. He has 2 dwarven parents, but he learns that he was adopted. He's a 6'6" human.
If he hasn't figured out he's a human by now, I don't think he ever will.
He's not a dwarf. And when his parents are finally like, look, dude, you're not a dwarf. Like, we're sending you to the human world. He just, like, the entire sequence of him learning that just reminded me of the movie Elf. It was absolutely hilarious. And then when he gets to Ankh-Morpork, the main city that the patrician rules over, he becomes part of the Watch, and everybody's like, why do you want to be part of the Watch? Like, they're a joke. And he's like, no, like, I'm told this is like how you become a man. Like, this is a respectable position. This is what I want to do. And he's so letter of the law. Like, he's writing citations and arresting people for things that no one even knows is a law, because no one has abided by it for years and years and years, because the Watch is a joke. At one point, he even tries to arrest the patrician, who's like the ruler of the city, he starts writing up a citation for like one of the wheels on his carriage is like not up to code, and he's about to arrest him for it. So they kind of like get him out of there because they're like, no, you can't do that. So, I mean, this has been great so far. Once again, the amount of just wackiness to it, like the whole secret society in this book. If you've read the books, you know what the secret society is. They are absolutely hysterical. Their conversations. It's basically this mage that's trying to control a bunch of idiots, essentially, to do something for him. And just all these people bickering amongst themselves while he's trying to, like, be this, commanding person and ruler and kind of, like, get them to do his bidding. And they're all just, like, constantly interrupting him and talking to each other. And it's a riot. This is just fantastic. I love this series so far. And I don't doubt that this will be one of my favorite fantasy series moving forward, just because I am 100% into the ridiculous nature of these, while also being hit with Terry Pratchett was a super smart guy. His writing's awesome. Every once in a while, he will just hit you with some some great non-humor, and it's just, he's like a wealth of knowledge on the page. I respect the hell out of his writing. I respect him just fully going for how ridiculous this gets at times, because like, okay, there's like a crazy cat lady in this book named Lady Rampkin, I believe it is, but she has dragons. They're little stumpy swamp dragons, and it's hilarious because she names them like batshit insane names because she like takes them to shows and stuff. One of the dragons' names is just truly precious. Good boy Bindle Featherstone, the dragon. Just everything this guy does in these books is fantastic, and I love it. And I can't wait to just get through like these series, like standalone series. So sort of, you know, the Watch books and the Death books, but also just going beyond that and seeing like the overall Disc world at large and see like how much this stuff ties in together. Because like I know even for the Watch, like the few characters that are in this, I've seen the terrible show trailer for the whatever the abomination is by the BBC of doing the Watch, and there were some characters that I was like, who are these people? And then I've seen, you know, pictures of the Watch that like as they should be, and there's a ton of them, so I'm just ready to get more of these characters. And I love Terry Pratchett's writing. I think the guy is fantastic. So that is everything that I will have read in January. As I said, I'll finish this up tonight right after I finish recording this Sunday. And it was a great month of reading. And February is looking to be awesome as well. I do have my TBR up for that. We'll see if I can make it through everything because I'm moving and it's just going to be kind of a hectic month. But we'll see. Like and subscribe as always, guys. Do hit up Patreon if you want to support the channel financially and continue the book buying habits that we have here. That's, of course, always optional, but always greatly appreciated. I am getting the patrons more involved now, so if you are not aware, Howlers help me pick at least one book that I'm going to read every other month. We take a vote on that, and I just throw it out there. What do you guys want me to read? And then I'm also going to start, well, I'm starting next month with First Law, doing sort of channel read-alongs, and I'm extending this to all my patrons to just sort of vote and pick on something to read along as a group. And then, of course, just by the nature of Discworld, by the nature of Discord, everyone's going to try to get into the conversation, and I don't necessarily want to restrict the conversation only to the patrons. I, at least for now, want to just get them involved in sort of the process of picking something that we can all read as a group, and then just sort of involving the whole Discord, and I keep wanting to say Discworld now, getting the whole getting the whole Discord involved in the conversation is always just a lot of fun, so I like doing that. So more of that in the future, possibly continue for the First Law after book 1. I assume that's going to get a lot of votes, so stay tuned for that. So yeah, speaking of Discord, jump in there, continue the conversation, and feel free to drop in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts on anything that I read in January and what you're most looking forward to in February. And until next time, everybody, keep reading.